everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Welcome back to the channel. Happy and blessed Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to episode 435 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight I'm going to give some of my initial thoughts on the new Zelda game out on the Nintendo Switch that I have been playing quite a bit. And it's been a ton of fun, and that is, of course, Tears of the Kingdom. And, I'm going to give some of my initial reactions. Still very early on in the overall story mode, because if you've ever played the Breath of the Wild game before, first off, a lot of similarities. But one of the things that you know about it is just how massive the world truly is, which is kind of insane how massive it is, and yet it can be played on such a small device. And I think the game itself is only about like 16 gigs or so, which, again, is just truly insane because of how many things there are. And so I've been doing a lot of side quests, a lot of temple shrine grinding, as it were, before going through any of the other major, any of the major, story elements. I'm still very, very early on there, but we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the Guardians of the Galaxy box office, because just as I had predicted, some people, I think, are, maybe downplaying a little bit just how good the film is doing at the box office. And keep in mind, I say this as someone who is incredibly tired of the MCU, was not a huge fan of this movie, and I even admit that the only things I liked about it are things that I'm incredibly biased towards, which are very cute, cuddly animals. Now, granted, I think that the CGI is actually objectively well done, especially for those moments, but still a bias nonetheless. But the fact still remains, the movie is doing quite well. Now, some might say, yeah, but look at the other films and look at the other, look at the current state of the MCU. And look, I'm not going to deny that the MCU is not in a good state. You go back last year, I bring this up all the time, you go back to the $950 million made by Doctor Strange, then dropped off a cliff, $200 million to Thor 4, Love and Thunder's Thor, $750 million, and then you jump up a little bit to the about $850 million or so made by Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This movie, though, is performing in such a way, especially internationally, where there is definitely consideration for the film to be ending north of $800 million. And though that would be the lowest grossing of the franchise when you adjust those numbers for inflation, as you know I must always do, you are still talking about a film that is, again, really the best chance and the best performing film that the MCU has seen in the last few years, and is likely going to be the last of the MCU titles to actually do well. So, anyway, we'll talk about that. We'll also give an update on the Super Mario Brothers box office. I'm waiting to see if it looks like the international numbers have actually updated, with the movie now up to $59.5 million in Japan, and kind of jumping off of what I had been talking about at my box office breakdown from this past Sunday. It's not showing up in Japan, as a lot of people had predicted. Remember, everyone and their mother was coming out to say, but it's Nintendo. Nintendo is huge in Japan. Mario is an icon there. And again, I'm not denying that those things are true. $59 million, though, right? Even if you look at the yen, because that's the other thing people are bringing up is, well, the yen's very, very, weak right now. It's like, yeah, but even when you compare yen to yen, this film is still not doing to, again, the degree that others had said it would, right? I think all of us were going to be able to say, yeah, the film probably is going to do well, because any film, especially a Western film, kind of going back a little bit to what I've been saying for months, right? Hey, this is still a Western film, because it is still a Western distribution. Not to mention the weeks of delay, because they were trying to get this, I guess the point of it was to try to get it to the holiday. Turns out doesn't seem to have helped it all that much. Now, again, that's all speculation. This film very well could have done the same numbers had they released it on the same day. But I know how these things work at the box office, and typically when you have films all coming out at the same time, there is this worldwide excitement. There is this worldwide momentum. That is a very real thing, right? We've seen this happen with other big releases before. But when you have these delayed releases, especially delays in key markets, ultimately what that does is it degrades that momentum. It slows things down in those markets. You know, that momentum that could have been picked up and carried on over and then continued to push through that holiday, the Golden Week or whatever it is, in Japan. But they didn't do that. And right now we're looking at the film probably topping out around $100 million, which again is very good. There's nothing wrong with $100 million in Japan. That's a very strong number. But is it anywhere close to the animes? Not really. We're talking a film that is performing as well as some of the best Western movies, but not even the best as far as total box office return is concerned. So interesting numbers. And then South Korea is just non-existent. I talked about this on the box office breakdown as well, right? Because everyone was bringing up it was Japan and South Korea. Well, Japan, though, that's looking like it's going to have a pretty strong number there at $100 million. South Korea is not showing up for this movie. Only $15.2 million there so far. So I was even willing to give, okay, I think this film could bring in $250 million from those two countries. And I thought I was being pretty generous. It's not even looking like it's going to get close to that $250 million mark. Like, I would say it's probably not even going to get to $50 million in South Korea at this rate. But again, these markets do work a little bit differently, so never say never. But ultimately, the numbers just really aren't showing up in the way that many people had thought that was going to be. So we'll talk about that also. But before we get started, make sure to smash the like button, like the fire button, honestly smash the rumble button as well. And let's say hello to the people in the chat. First off, Orange Reviews, who is one of my mods. Thank you very much for being here. And he indeed lets everyone know how things work here. Please put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment, @Odin, no matter what platform you're watching on. If you're trying to get my attention, if you want to super chat or donate via Streamlabs, you are more than welcome to do so. Do not feel obligated unless you desire. But I will likely get to those comments more quickly. Typically, I fall about 20 to 30 minutes behind in the chat. And this is a family-friendly channel. This is a family-friendly community, so behave yourselves in the chat. And we are totally open to fun trolling. General Wingster, I don't know if he's here yet. I haven't seen him in the chat, but General Wingster, he knows what's up. But if you're going to be malicious, if you're going to be mean, hey, again, we're a family channel. Simple as that. Keely Chow, what is going on? Welcome back, saying, how are you, Thor and Freya, doing? We're doing quite well. Baby Thor was trying to help me go to bed. I was laying on the floor in his room, and so he immediately was like, I'm going to put a cover on top of you, and then he decided to get all of his stuffed animals and put those on top as well. It was very, very cute. He's in that cute age where those moments are just so precious. At the same time, he's also toddler. He's full-on toddler mode, and so there's also those moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, you're crazy. But anyway, they're doing well. It says, please pray for Becky Browand. She's going to be having surgery in June to remove a lump on her neck. Absolutely. I know that she has been in this chat before, so absolutely we'll be praying for her and for a successful surgery. Kimberly G, what is going on? Kimberly G, thanks for being a member on the channel. Boethius, what's going on, Boethius? Great name there. Jake the Movie Geek, what's going on, brother? No. I've already eaten that which I had promised. And it was disgusting. And it had extra pineapple, so ugh. Gmonkey76, what is going on? How in Theft, what's going on? Thank you for being here. Short, Laura, the Modern Major General, what's going on? She's my other mod here. And she is the Modern Major General, so show her some respect. Mr. Roy, what is going on, good sir? One of my chosen. Alice McCarthy, howdy, Odin, how's it going? How's Thor? I heard rumors there will be a Fast 12 and that The Rock returned. I heard a rumor, Alex, that you're going to be watching Fast 10, 11, and 12, even if they don't exist. You've already pre-ordered your ticket, or rather pre-ordered your digital copy of the film to watch. Much love to you, good sir. Yeah, that, again, kind of crazy to think that this week we do have a Fast and Furious film coming out. I believe it's this week, which is just, again, kind of crazy to think about. I just can't honestly believe that there's actually been 10 of them, but also that we are just so close to another release. Yeah, May 19th. So this coming Thursday, Friday, Fast 10 coming out. And what's interesting is that the early box office numbers for it have actually not looked very good. But I talked about this a little bit on Saturday about how I think that those numbers are very misleading. Essentially, it looks like what Box Office Pro and some of the others might be doing, at least Box Office Pro, is they're taking the numbers of the last movie, Fast 9, which, remember, came out 2021, came out right at the heart of films coming back at the box office, was really actually a very strong performer internationally, did a lot of things that a lot of other films was not able to do in certain markets. And so they're basing it off of those numbers. The problem, though, is that, okay, there were still a lot of theaters that were closed. There were still a lot of countries that were still doing various things. And I think that is leading to some speculating a softer box office open for the film. And even though I'm someone that, again, I'm not a big fan of the current Fast and Furious films, I stopped at 7. To me, 7 was a very low point. I think that the death of Paul Walker, rest in peace, Paul Walker, I think that ultimately destroyed whatever it is they were trying to do for 7, and they just haven't been able to pick things back up since. 1 through 6, I thought just were a lot of dumb fun. And then the rest became so dumb that it was no longer fun, if that makes sense. So I'm by no means a cheerleader for this franchise. And yet, even I'm looking at those numbers saying, okay, I mean, this is a Fast and Furious franchise that does bonkers money overseas. Just does crazy numbers overseas. And I mean, even other people who disagree with me about how good the Guardians of the Galaxy box office is doing, even they will bring up, hey, Fast 10's coming out, because they recognize that this is a massive property that's going to take up a lot of theaters, a lot of the premium formats too. But anyway, Kincaid Rumsky over on Rumble. What's going on, good sir? Says, do you know the percentages other countries get on given movie tickets sales? For example, Japan. Not every individual country. The ones that typically people know off the top of their head is China. The studios get 25%, 75% of that goes to the CCP. And that's the reason why I always call out these studios when they are doing dealings in China. Universal is a big one. Disney, of course, is a big one too, especially since Bob Iger came back in power. That relationship with Disney has once again been flourishing. And so, yeah, millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of dollars go into the coffers of the CCP because of these deals. But yeah, the studios only get 25% of the receipts there. The average that most will give is that roughly from all the foreign nations, about 40%. So they get a lot less back from foreign nations, from the international box office, than they do from the domestic. And the way I've always described it is, when I worked at a theater, I was able to talk to my GM. I was able to talk to him, knowing most about the financial situation. And I was like, how much do we actually get from these tickets? And the way he described it to me is, within the first couple of weeks of a movie's release, we get about $1 for every ticket sold, right? And that time, the average was around $10. So again, about $1 for every $10. So, or rather, out of every $10, $1 goes to the theater in the first couple weeks, and then the other $9 goes to the studio. And so when you take that into account, that 90% or so box office they get, I, again, typically view it as studios getting roughly 60%. Because if you take the low end of the 25% of China, and again, not every film has the China factor in there, and then the roughly 40% from the other markets, again, I think 60% is, obviously it's a rough estimate, but it's served me well so far, I think. Some people will say it's about 50-50, and again, I think that's at least a fair assessment. I'm not going to, tear that one down by any means, because I think that is just another way of looking at it. But yeah, as far as just overall box office, 40% roughly for other nations, but every country can be a little bit different. And then China is the absolute worst, though, 25% return for the studio, which is awful. Sandy, what's going on? Welcome back. Snowglum, what is going on? Sorry, Snow Golem 13 over on Odyssey. What is going on? Thanks for being here. Saying, I'm not looking forward to Fast 10. I checked out when Paul Walker died. It just went full crazy. I agree. Again, it was fun. It was silly fun up until 7. And then once 7 hit, it became so dumb. It just wasn't entertaining anymore. I totally get it. Snow Golem, thank you for hanging out on Odyssey. Great Wuda, what is going on? Welcome. Super Anime Gamer. Hey, what is up, my dude? What's going on, Super? Thanks for being here. Great Wuda, it's Pierce Brosnan's 70th birthday. Dang. Can't realize he was that old. Scott McKenzie, what's going on, good sir? Dan Crane, hail Odin, baby Thor. Another ball game tonight. God bless you and your lovely family. What is your favorite film, live or animated, with animals? Well, hey, I hope you have fun at the games. I know that I've been keeping track of the NHL playoffs. Sad to see the Kraken lose. Not that I'm a huge Kraken fan. I literally just got back into the NFL. Not the NFL, the NHL. My goodness. That's how my brain works. The NHL, just the past week or so, really, because I saw the game on and I just decided, I might as well check out, see what this is going on, how the NHL's been these days. It's been a lot of years since I've watched it. I was like, oh, okay, actually this is still fun, and hey, I've been keeping up with it since. And I just really liked how the underdog teams were doing very well. The road teams especially were doing very well. And so really the prime reason why I was becoming more of a Kraken fan was more so because of the goalie. I just loved every time that they would say, was it Grubauer? Grubauer with the save. And I'm like, that's just such a great name of Grubauer. I'm silly like that. But Weedia says, I'm just grinding shrines and unlocking all the towers. Such a fantastic game. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, literally before the stream went live, I was playing it, and I had just gotten to, well, first off, I was about to get attacked by some of the flying creatures. I don't know exactly their names. I don't have all those things memorized. But then all of a sudden I was like, oh, look, a shrine. Let me dive down towards that. And so I'm like, oh, I happen to have found Zora's Domain. And so now I'm at a shrine at Zora's Domain. So yeah, definitely been grinding though, because the last time I played it, I more so focused on the general story elements. And that was a lot of fun. But then it just made it that much more difficult when I would get to the places and not have enough hearts and not have enough stamina. Yeah. I will say the puzzles. I'll talk about the puzzles. Anyway, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan. How about a hockey player? What is going on? Laura says, Zelda was after my gaming time, but my daughter loves Zelda. Thanks for the review. I had no idea there was a new game out. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And guess with that comment, I'll just give my official segment of the show talking about the game. Yeah, so Tears of the Kingdom. To me, the best way to describe it is if you ever remember playing Zelda on the N64. One of the greatest games of all time, not just one of the greatest Zelda games, but one of the greatest games in general, is Zelda Ocarina of Time on the N64. It's a brilliant game. It's so much fun. It's a game I still go back and play. When I picked up my Retroid Pocket 2 to play some retro games, that was one of the first games that I picked back up to start playing again because it's just so much fun. And when you start picking that game back up again, you just it like all just clicks, and you're like, I remember all of the little secret things, and I remember that there was a hidden hole here, and okay, here's where these gold Skaludas are, all these other things. And so it's so much fun. But then not long after when that first game came out, they released the film, or rather they released the game Majora's Mask. And Majora's Mask had a lot of similarities, right? So you could tell they used the same character design, the same sounds. It was as if they took the code, right, put it down, and then started saying, okay, let's change things up. Let's try to change things to make it a unique gaming experience. And it was absolutely unique to the point of it had a lot of similarities, but it was still a different game. That is what Tears of the Kingdom is to Breath of the Wild. It's the same general concept of the world, the same character designs, the same sounds, some of the same mechanics as well, but they've changed a lot of things, right? And so you are now able to, fuse things together, right? To fuse weapons. You're also able to build all these crazy contraptions. You can build a hot air balloon, basically, and you can put a rocket on a shield and have it, zoom you out of a battle if you want to. And it's been a really cool game component that they've added to it. But I will say that's also where one of my only criticisms of the game is, which is, again, not really a criticism because it's more of a preference. I am not the biggest fan of puzzles. And so the shrines have always been, puzzly, right? They've always been about trying to figure things out. But in these puzzles, in these shrines, you are having to basically build and figure out, okay, what do I need to build? What special power do I need to use in this given situation? To such a degree where, again, it's just different enough to where my brain cannot fully wrap my head around it, because there are, so many other ways now. And I guess this is, again, a good thing. There are so many other ways that you can solve these puzzles. There's not just one right answer. But that also, again, for my brain, the way my brain works, it can drive me crazy. I love the combat ones, even though they're not really very combat-y. Like the ones in Breath of the Wild, you would be fighting and it would be tough. And now all the ones, at least that I've gotten to so far, have been just teaching you different fighting techniques, which I like, because I like learning that to be able to use in the battles around the world, which are still, again, basically the same with the same villains and a few new ones here and there. But again, the puzzle component, I'm just not a huge fan of it, but that's because I'm not a big puzzles person in general. So luckily though, there's just so much amazing stuff in there, whether it's the world, which is just beautiful and so massive, and it's incredible. As I said in the beginning, it's incredible that they were able to get this massive world in just 16 gigs, you know? And yeah, it's a lot of fun though. It is definitely a lot of fun. So yeah, overall, can definitely give my recommendation to Tears of the Kingdom. If you have the Nintendo Switch, if you're a fan of the Zelda games, and hey, if you like puzzles, it's got a lot of that in there. And I have not even really dove that much into the overall story. For anyone playing the game, I have basically just run into Impa and am trying to figure out. Basically, she was like, oh, we went in the hot air balloon up and looked down, and it was like, you need to find the tier, or something about a tier. And I was like, I don't really know what this is. I'm just going to go and try to find as many towers and shrines as I can. And so that's what I've been doing the last couple of days. And hey, it's been a lot of fun. So anyway, Keely Chow, do you consider yourself a gamer? No, I do not. I played Breath of the Wild. I was able to play that game all the way through and had a lot of fun. I played Hogwarts Legacy when that came out. That was a lot of fun. I'm very picky. I'm very choosy with my games. Hogwarts Legacy actually came about because, one, the controversy surrounding it, which was, again, really fake controversy. So that made me want to buy the game even more. Add to that the fact that my wife is a huge Harry Potter fan, books and movies, more so books, much more books. And so we ended up getting the PS5 just so that she could start playing that. It's around the time that we found out that we were expecting our second. And she'll be around in the fall. But it was, again, a kind of a happy circumstance that actually came into my life. And so when I found out about this one, I was like, okay, I really like Breath of the Wild, so I think I will, probably end up getting this one. And I saw just very brief, actually, I don't even know if I ever saw full gameplay. I just saw some images. I'm like, okay, this seems very much like Breath of the Wild, and sure enough, it was to such a degree that I was like, okay, yeah, I think I definitely want to lay out the money for this. And it's been a lot of fun. Carl, who's a member on the channel, what's going on? I haven't played Zelda since N64 days. Hey, those N64 days are phenomenal. Those games are phenomenal. Ocarina of Time still holds up. Again, I still go back and I'll play that one. It's great. Griffin Turbo, welcome back. Glad to have you here. Just under the red shirt, hail to you. Thanks for being back here as well. And again, if you have a comment or question, put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. Whether you're on Rumble, Odyssey, or YouTube, even if there's nobody there, the @Odin just helps me figure out whether you're trying to get my attention or not. So anyway, Dan Crane, that's no ball games. No ball games tonight, Dan Crane. Well, hey, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. John Evan Bear, I usually avoid Christian-made movies like The Plague, but I went to go see Nefarious because of your recommendation, and I'm glad I did. Hey, John Evan Bear, I'm right there with you. I also tend to avoid Christian-made movies because they tend to be awful. They tend to be very generic, very, lowest common denominator, and it just drives me crazy because there are so many amazing stories that could be told. And if they instead try to focus on how do we make this film appeal to a general audience, but also have those elements of faith in there, that's, again, if we're talking especially about from an evangelistic standpoint, you're not going to be able to evangelize if you're trying to make a Christian movie. And that's what I love about the creators, the directors, the writers, and of course, Steve Dace as a producer on this, was that they focus much more on that element, saying, okay, let's try to make a film that's going to be able to appeal to the audiences that would tend to go see horror films, thriller movies, but then also have a lot of these truths sprinkled throughout. And it's so effective. It's so well done in how it does it, and that's why it's one of those things where it's not even something I want to say is a Christian movie, right? Even though it obviously is, because it's a well-made thriller that has those Christian themes and Christian elements. And that's what all of these should have, right? That's what all of these movies should have in them. And so I hope that the directors of this, because they've worked on other things, they actually were associated with like the God's Not Dead movies, which again, that might be for some people. Those movies aren't really for me. And so I hope that they take this and they kind of run with this going forward and say, okay, these are the kinds of movies we need to start making. But yeah, glad that you liked it, though. Very glad that you liked it. It is definitely a film that I think is vastly overlooked, of course, by Hollywood, but also just hasn't been seen by a lot of people. Matt317, what is going on? Good sir. Thanks for being here. One of my chosen. Michael Hill, what's going on? Hail Odin, mods chat. Hope everyone has had a good day. Hey, it's been going well so far. I'm in my last couple full days of school. We start exams on Thursday just because of the way the schedule worked this year. We have it starting midweek. So we have exams Thursday, Friday, exams Monday, Tuesday, makeup day on Wednesday. I hope and pray everyone is healthy so that I don't have to worry about any makeup exams for Wednesday. And then summertime is going to be here, which again is just kind of crazy. Speaking of schedule, since it's on the top of my head, I'll mention this again at the end of the stream. I won't have a stream on Saturday. I'll be out of town. So I'll once again be out of FNT as well because we'll be driving and spending time with family in the Atlanta area this weekend. Hardwick, what's going on? It says, the High Evolutionary was great. The writing and the acting were both top-notch. Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people have been pointing out that the High Evolutionary is a better villain than Kang, and I think that's completely on point. There were certain elements of his character that were a bit over the top, but ultimately I think that it was very effective. The acting especially was very, very good. So, yeah. But it's one of those sad things because it's like, but this is, and that's probably why I enjoyed the film more than I thought that I would, is not only because it has those moments throughout that I think are well made, even though it also has a lot of moments that are not very well made, but the fact that it does feel like a more of a self-contained story, right? There's certain connections, obviously, with the MCU. This is still very much an MCU movie, but it also feels unique enough where it's not trying to really set up for anything big down the line. It's not really even continuing with the Kang storyline either. And so it's kind of able to play. It's kind of able to do a lot of things that these other films, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and Lord knows the Marvels are not going to be able to do. They're not going to be able to continue. They're not going to be able to pick up. They're not going to be able to build in any way, in any meaningful way. Matt317, I'm waiting to hear the Mario movie with a Japanese dub. Yeah, and I know a lot of people, again, were saying, I mean, just wait for that Japan release. We're just not seeing it, though. And we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Candy T, what's going on? Welcome back, member on the channel. King and Rumsky over on Rumble says, did you ever follow Christian rock back in the day? Not really. There were a couple of bands that I had some knowledge of. As far as like Christian rock bands, Reliant K might be the most Christian rocky of those. There were other bands that had like more Christian elements to them, but were not necessarily Christian rock. So for instance, and this is very specific, there's one album by a screamo band called Under Oath. And so they're all Christians. So like their music has and lyrics have certain Christian elements, but again, not really Christian rock. But they have a great album called Define the Great Line. Great album. I don't like really any of their other songs except for the album, really the entirety of the album for Define the Great. I don't know what it is about that one, but it's really great. So I guess that would be one. A few songs from Switchfoot, but yeah, not really into Christian rock in a like formal sense. Keely Chow, speaking of Westerns, I hope someone turns Ghost of the Badlands into a movie. Well, didn't they do that into a show? I feel like a show, honestly, I think that as long as you have responsible people, that's a big factor, responsible people behind the project, anything that is related to a game has to be almost by default has to be, if it's going to be done correctly, a limited series, mini series. Because if you make it a movie, it's probably not going to turn out well. It's probably not going to turn out quite right. And so, like, for instance, if Nintendo, with all of the profits they're making, because even though, as I mentioned, Mario's not doing that hot as far as what people were expecting in Japan, and is definitely not doing very well in South Korea, it's still making a lot of money. And it only costs $100 million, so its profits are off the charts. I've mentioned this on my box office breakdowns. That movie has made enough profit to fund the next 5 to 7 movies they might have planned. And if they can spend $100 million, or even less, maybe a tiny bit more, they'll make even more profits back. But if they ever were to adapt a Zelda, for instance, I honestly would rather them go the series route instead of trying to make movies, because I think games just are much better to that format, because there's just so much story, there's so much stuff to get in. If you make a movie out of it, it's just asking for something to be wrong with it. Carl says, sorry, I had to finish Berserk. No problem. No problem. Jono Wingster, yes. Yes. Now, this is top tier trolling. This is the kind of trolling that I can respect. Trolling. We do a little trolling here. We like to do a little trolling here. Zach Richmond, what's going on? He says, greetings from the Bayou Country. What's up, brother? Keely Chow, that's the reason why I censor the F word and not give someone the middle finger. Yeah, absolutely, because we are a family stream. Scott McKenzie, yes, troll in the dungeon. Keely Chow, no problem. Thank you for being here. Forever Sci-Fi, hail to you. Thanks for joining us once again. Matt317 says here, similarly, I've also been playing Zelda with the Japanese dub. Interesting. I suppose that is possible, but I didn't think about it. I didn't think about how that would actually be a thing. Michael Hill, the great pineapple pizza controversy. Ah, yes. Everyone will remember the great pineapple pizza controversy of 2023. The great pizza schism of 2023. Let's see. Hardwick. Did you watch Gary eating Vegemite and Jeremy eating pineapple pizza? That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I've seen clips of it. I know it's been clipped to heck. I'm glad you enjoyed it, though. Glad you liked it. Let's see. Carl, I'm with you there as to the Fast. Never seen any of them and won't. If you enjoy it, that's great. I would definitely recommend checking out the first one. Again, I think that they're quite entertaining. I think they're quite fun. Up until 7. Victor Fontaine, what's up? Yeah, no one I know is going to see Fast 10. Yeah, but keep in mind that that's just the thing, right? Because I don't know a lot of people in my own life who are going to see the film either. But a lot of people go to see these movies. The numbers very much back that up. You can compare and look at pretty much all of the Fast and Furious films and be able to figure out pretty quickly, oh, this movie is quite a juggernaut. This franchise is quite a juggernaut. And again, I'll pull up those numbers too. Unfortunately, the numbers does not have an adjustment for inflation toggle for comparing the franchise, but I do think it's still important nonetheless to look at those numbers because it's massive. It is just a massive franchise. And that's why I think that, again, two things can be true. One, I think that the film is, again, there's a chance that it doesn't perform as well as some of the others. That's kind of the thing that we've been seeing with movies that are not as good as they probably should be, right? Movies that rely upon their audiences and rely upon certain elements of even certain levels of ignorance to a certain degree. I'm not trying to say that they're ignorant nonetheless, but rather that franchises like the Fast and Furious, to me, it can be very much equated to the MCU, right? Where the MCU continues to make movies and people continue to go see them, but the movies themselves and the stories and the actual effort becomes so much less and less and less and less that ultimately, a lot more people start to give up on those franchises, start to give up on those movies, right? That we've seen that with the MCU, and we might end up seeing that with the Fast and Furious franchise. Again, the trailer doesn't really provide anything new for me to want to really go back into the franchise. Brie Larson in it, especially, does not make me have any desire to go see it. The fact that in the first trailer, you have to have one of the primary female characters in the franchise going, game recognizes game. And then her doing with her little smirk like, thank you for acknowledging me. It's like, stop it. So, but hey, there are still a lot of people. Alice McCarthy Jr., J. Alice McCarthy Jr. in this chat right now. He's a big supporter of the Fast and Furious franchise. Much to the enjoyment of ourselves. Oh, man, let's see. Joe Wingster, it's cool, Odin. I play mediocre games, too. I'm currently playing Gears 4, and it's not that good. Mediocre games? How dare you? Great Wuda, a theater gets only $1 if the price is 10. That's highway robbery. Great Wuda, that is until you remember how much money theaters get from popcorn and drink sales. When you're spending that $6 to $10 on that popcorn that cost the theater pennies on the dollar, you recognize, okay, opening weekend, first couple weeks, especially from major releases, if a studio is getting 9 out of every $10, guess what? Think about how many people show up to the theater on those first 2 weekends. Think about how much popcorn and how many drinks are sold during that time. So it sounds like it on paper, and to a certain degree it is, but that's also why there have been some changes. And again, this is why I shout out Valiant Renegade all the time. I recommend him highly, even though I disagree with him on certain elements. Again, we have different standards, different metrics, but I still respect the hell out of him for what he does, because one of the really important things that he has done is he's gone into the actual tax records of theaters to show, hey, here's how things have changed, right? That the pandemic, especially with the movement of studios to the streaming services, some of the agreements between the theaters and the studios had to therefore change because of that. And so again, I still give a lot of credit to that. I still am standing firm in in my methodology, but I think that there is still something important to be said there. But yeah, it is definitely an unfair relationship in the beginning of a release, but because the theater is getting tons of profit from the ticket, from the popcorn and from the drink sales and the candy sales. Anyway, Ryan Doles, haven't seen a single Fast movie. Any of them worth watching? I think Fast 5 is probably the best in the franchise. But I think they're all, 1 through 6, I think are all fun in different ways. Personally, I love 3 because it's so different and so bizarre. It's great. Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan says Dallas Stars suck. Yeah, I was rooting for the Kraken in that series, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan. I really was. And so, yeah, and now I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, man, I guess the Panthers, maybe, the Florida Panthers. And then Las Vegas, I wasn't rooting for them in their series, but the fact that they've only existed for a handful of years, I think that's really impressive. If you follow any sports, you know that any new team that gets established in any league, it usually takes a while for things to get going. So Pierce Brosnan is a silver fox, says Laura. Silver fox. Love it. Master of Gaming, what's going on? Then says, Hogwarts Legacy on Nintendo Switch got delayed to November. I'm going to be honest. It's hard for me to think about that game working very well on the Switch. And it's because I know how big the game is on PS5, like just size-wise. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason why it's been delayed. And it also makes me happier that instead of my wife and I waiting on that game for the Switch, that we ended up going with the PS5 instead. But yeah, it's a game I could see having a lot of complications because of just the sheer magnitude, because that game is also quite massive. And so I imagine that getting that to scale on a Switch and the size difference too, I'm not an expert on games, but I could see how that could be a problem from a practical standpoint. Orange Reviews, I'm an OG when it comes to Zelda. Love the Nintendo game, the original. Well, I think some would obviously argue and say, well, you got to go with Zelda on, what was it, Game Boy? Or was it out on a system before Game Boy? It probably was. So you have to go to like Link to the Past, or was it Windbreaker? There's, again, a lot of other older versions of Zelda. But for me, I agree. The lore for me begins with Zelda Ocarina of Time. Because those other games definitely have lore to them, but I just love the narrative element of Ocarina of Time. It just, to me, is such a special game for that very reason. NES, Soul Assassin, yes, okay, NES. I thought that there may have been a system prior to the Game Boy, but obviously, as I mentioned, I'm not an expert on that. Snow Golem over on Odyssey. We should have never sold them to Dallas. Oh, dang. Oh, was that a team that at one point was in a different location? Again, I don't know these things. Abomination also says, if studios would just honor the source material, it would be fine. I could watch a movie about Final Fantasy VII. The group visits Gold Saucer, and it's just that. A little world building, go on the date, play the arcade games, and meet the characters. They can make the rest up easy peasy. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Yeah, and again, I can understand and I can see where you're coming from, Abomination. But as I said, I honestly think that games, to get truly fully developed, need a lot more time than the 2 hours that would be covered in a movie. I mean, that's not even going into if they're trying to make it into a trilogy of films. Because we always see how that can turn out if they try to stretch things out, you know? But, yeah. King and Rumsky helped to confirm the Minnesota North Stars. Oh, okay. Again, it's been a hot minute since I watched any NHL. In fact, that brings me back to another game, Sega Genesis. Great system. NHL 96. That was the game my brothers and I would play all the time. So much fun. Let's see. Over on YouTube, Hardwick says, throughout all of Guardians 3, Nebula looked like she either had a beer belly or was pregnant, even in her blue uniform in the final half. I've never found an explanation for why. I don't know. Wasn't it like there was a rumor that she was pregnant and then she wasn't, or she was pregnant, but not at that time? I don't really know. And again, that's the kind of thing for me where I'm like, I feel that for that character, one, I didn't really notice a beer belly or anything like that. That was not something, I guess I wasn't really looking at her midsection and it wasn't prominent enough for me to really notice. So, Jeremy Zakowski, Ganondorf is one of my favorite Nintendo villains. I love his music theme and I would listen to that theme for hours. Yeah, absolutely. I just love the laugh from the N64 from Ocarina of Time. Obviously, that's a terrible version. But you know what I mean. Over on Odyssey, Snow Golem. Yep, Minnesota had them before Texas. I'm not the greatest fan of the new name. Dang. I will say, at least I feel like it works to a certain degree. Like Minnesota North Stars. Okay, that makes sense. The Dallas Stars. I don't know. Makes sense to me, but yeah, I could see why there could be bad blood, though. For sci-fi, I've been killed by lightning despite unequipping all metal items. That was frustrating. Still having a lot of fun with Zelda. Really, I've also been struck by lightning because I forgot about that. I was like, wait, maybe if I just get underneath this one thing, I'll be okay. And I was like, nope. Maybe I can outrun it. Nope. And so, but when I unequipped, I was fine. So that is interesting. I'm wondering if maybe there was one item that, because I know for me, I did get struck a second time, I believe, and I had thought I had gotten everything removed, but I didn't realize that I had not, I thought I had equipped a non-metal item, and it ended up still being there, so anyway. Great Buddha says, I hate puzzles too. Yeah, it's just, again, I don't find a lot of enjoyment in puzzles, in just a general sense. Just never really been my cup of tea. Ryan Doles, do you recommend Tears of the Kingdom for Zelda newcomers? I haven't played one before. If you were going to jump into a game, I would actually probably recommend getting Breath of the Wild, because the game mechanics are very, very similar, and that game is still fresh. That game is still really good. That game is still very entertaining, and you can probably get that game on discount somewhere, or something like that, I would imagine, since it's been out for several years now. But yeah, I mean, I think you will still, what I also love about Tears of the Kingdom is that it also is something that if you have no experience with the Zelda world or anything like that, you could still play it. It's still going to make sense. It's still going to get you prepped. It's going to teach you all the different mechanics that you need to know in order to play the game. But I don't know. For me, I feel like playing it, having played Breath of the Wild, I'm able to say, oh, okay, I'm seeing a lot of these connections, and okay, some time has passed, and now this is going on, this is happening, these characters are still around. So there's a lot of these throwbacks and callbacks to Breath of the Wild, and certain elements where I think you appreciate them more if you've played Breath of the Wild. But anyway. King and Rumsky says, is Phil McCracken the owner of the Seattle Kraken? Oh, man. Ben Dowdy, what's going on? Let's see. Carl says, honestly, I just listen a lot of the time. Hey, nice. Hybrid says, hello and good to see you, Odin. If they ever make a Zelda movie, I would love to see it made by Studio Ghibli. I actually wonder if Breath of the Wild was inspired by Princess Mononoke. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of things in general were inspired by the works of Miyazaki, especially in the animated sphere. But yeah, I mean, I would be interested to see a Studio Ghibli take on it. But yeah, again, for me, Zelda, I think a lot of people would much rather see a live action version of that. And the reason why is because why would you get a movie when you can get countless hours of story from the game, you know? And the game's already animated. I don't know. That's how my mind thinks about that and breaks that down. Tina Guzman, what's going on, Tina? Welcome back. Miss Minnesota fan, most of our schools don't get out until June. I was in grammar school in New Orleans, and there was at least a couple years, where we went all the way till June. There was this thing in our classroom called the June box, and if you like brought a toy in you weren't supposed to bring in to distract people or something like that, the teacher could take it, put it in the June box, and it meant you're not getting this back until June. You're not getting this back until you are in summertime. And you didn't want your thing getting into the June box. So I remember that being a thing. But yeah, but since then, and really, you know, middle school, high school, it was always, you know, towards the end of May. Keely Chow, have fun in Metro Atlanta. We're not going to be in Metro. Again, it's going to be, I say the Atlanta area, it's really like an hour outside of Atlanta proper, so. Hardwick says, there's a startup streaming service called Lure that's trying to make entertaining movies from a Christian standpoint. Their blog criticizes both Hollywood and things like PureFlix. Yeah, and ultimately it might sound good on paper, but I don't know. I'm just not interested. Ben Dowdy, what's going on? Thank you again for being a member for a month. Citizen of Asgardian level. Appreciate that. All right, let's see. Let me get the chat to update real quick. And then we'll dive into some box office talk. Actually, first, Laura says, I Googled myself once, and I guess there is a famous Christian singer named Laura Story. Is there really? That's great. Who would have thought that a famous Christian singer is one of my mods? I'm so humbled by that. Cthulhu, Further Seems Forever was a fantastic Christian band. I didn't hear about that band, actually. Father, would have been here sooner, but we just finished breaking in the new grill. Ooh, I hope that you grilled something delicious. We had tacos this evening. We had tacos on Taco Tuesday. And my wife got some ice cream, and I think I'm going to have some before I jump back into NHL hockey / Tears of the Kingdom. Hardwick, for me, the best parts of Guardians 3 were Rocket, High Evolutionary, Star-Lord, and Mantis. The only things that detracted much from the experience were how Gamora and Adam Warlock were handled. I don't know. I didn't mind Gamora all that much, personally. I thought that she was fine. You know, she was there. It shows that her character has gone through some growth. Adam Warlock is one where if I had any rich knowledge of the source material, I probably would have hated that. Because, again, I'm not a comics person. I always try to make that clear. Because, yeah, the character, to me, I think was really dumbed down. Like, was made into like an infant, was made into an infant and a child. And it may have made sense with what they were trying to get at, but from what I hear about the character in the comics, it's just, it's not even close. Not even close. So, but yeah, the Rocket stuff to me was the only stuff that I thought was actually, really at all compelling. Yeah. All right. Let me see. Let me try and get this thing set up. Discard. Why is this not working? I'm trying to get my news thing working. But it's not. Do I have to switch over to that? Oh, that's going to show a black screen. Oh well. It has to be done, unfortunately. It has to be done. Now, where is the silly box? That's what I want to know. Where is the box? I need to change the box. Oh my goodness. Where is it? Oh. What are you doing? Why? I can't find the thing. Where is it? I cannot find it. Oh my goodness. Well, so much for sharing my screen. You're welcome, everybody. I'll be here all evening. Just the red shirt. Let's go back to the chat. Father Miller, greetings. Joey Horn, what's going on, good sir? Rob D, hello, Odin. I think film studios really need to control their production budgets. 40 years ago, you could make a big budget film for less than 10 million. Well, Rob D, keep in mind that if you look at old budgets, you also got to adjust that for inflation too, because sometimes that can make a pretty big difference. Can sometimes make a pretty big difference. Laura says, I wasn't going to see Guardians, but then I saw a clip of Rocket and a bunch of baby raccoons, and my mind was changed. Yes, Laura, you get it. We're on the same wavelength there. Absolutely on the same wavelength. Because those little raccoons are so adorable. So cute. They are so cute. Oh, Windows updating, says Snow Golem. No, just the Odin.exe updating. Oh, no. Oh, yes. I was a boomer and I couldn't find the thing. And I actually still don't even know where it is. I'm clicking the same. The issue is that I normally set this up. Before the stream. And as soon as I click go live, I was like, oh, you know what? I totally forgot to do that. And for some reason, it's not letting me. That's very frustrating because I can't show my numbers. I got to show my numbers. I might try that again in a few minutes. I need a little time, though. I need some recovery. Hardwick, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is going to premiere at Cannes in 2 days, and the tiniest violin in the world was playing. The Old Guard, what's going on, good sir? Says, flying cars in space and Dominic Toretto being stronger than Captain America had me checking out. Yep, they went to space. It's so stupid. Jonah Winkster, I don't care about Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda kept yelling at Link about inflation, and it took me out of it. Now, that would be a game I would play. If Zelda was a box office guru and the entire time she's yelling about inflation as you're trying to do your missions, yes, that would be a game I would totally be down for. Al's McGarthy, Fast Saga is always better than the MCU. Fast is dumb fun. MCU is just torture. Bro, they're not that far separated these days, man. Laura says, I don't eat movie theater popcorn because canola oil is nasty. Yeah, I try not to think too much about it. I do eat movie theater popcorn. I guess my bigger issue is that not all movie theater popcorn is created equal, just like not every single AMC is created equal. There's one AMC that is so close to me. Like, it would make going to movies so easy. The issue is that every time I go, 90% of the time, the bulb in the theater is on the brink of death. And how can you tell? If you ever see a movie, and especially moments when there's like a lot of bright scenes, if you're ever seeing like a flicker, like you're like, wait, why does the screen, something seems wrong? Like the image is there, but there's like this weird flickering going on. And again, it's especially noticeable when there's a lot of light, when there's a lot of white on screen even. And that means the bulb is dying. That means that the theater does not want to take the time to change the bulb because the bulbs are expensive. Don't get me wrong. I understand the expense. But when you're paying as much as you are for a theater ticket these days, it's like, okay, you kind of need to provide, at the very least, a flicker-free experience. It's like, okay, you don't have to necessarily have all the bells and whistles, right? You don't have to be delivering food to my seat. You don't have to have the reclining seats, though, again, those are nice things. But at the very least, bare minimum, you need to provide excellent sound and you need to provide a flicker-free experience. So I typically don't go to that one, though, because of that. And so I go to one that's like 3 times further away. Because when I go to that theater, it's the opposite. 9 out of every 10 times, everything is the way it should be. The sound is great. The image is great. They have an IMAX screen, whereas the one near me has a Big D. Yes, that is the name of the format. Whoever thought of that name should probably be fired. Miss Minnesota fan, I may check Guardians out when it's available to rent. Yeah, and again, if you like the Guardians characters, if you're invested, and if you didn't mind the second one. Again, y'all know where I stand. I thought the first one's fantastic, very rewatchable. Second film, don't care for it. I thought it was trying to basically cash in on a lot of the sentiment from the first movie. A lot of things were repeated, and ultimately, I just didn't really care all that much. It was one of those things where I enjoyed it when I saw it, and then as soon as I started to think about it, I was like, okay, I never need to see this movie ever again. I've seen the first one several times. No desire to see the second one ever again. I feel that way about this one too. Very similar thought about this one as I did with the third, with the second one. With the added negative of this film is just way too long for its own good. Steven, did you finish the new Zelda game? If so, where would you rank this? Is this your top 3 Zelda game? Well, I think in my title I have initial thoughts. So no, I have not finished it. This is again just initial thoughts, and I gave them earlier in the stream. The short version of it is I'm liking it so far, but I'm barely into the game. I've played a lot, but story-wise, I'm barely into it. Been doing a lot of grinding at the shrines. And because I don't like puzzles, there have been some of them where I've gotten stuck and it's taken me forever to actually figure it out. Jonah Wingster, an unrelated note, when people say the new Zelda game, I keep thinking Tears in the Rain from Blade Runner. Nice. That's awesome. Steven, what do you think made The Rock to come back to Fast and Furious series? I don't know. And I don't really care because The Rock is not a reason I ever go to see a movie. So I would, just like with most things, probably money, I would imagine he thought, oh, I've been called up to the big leagues, right? I thought Fast and Furious was already a pretty big league to be a part of because those films have been so massive. But you think about how he was called up, right, to do Black Adam. You know, that's been working on that one. You know, it's been in the works for years. And the movie flopped. And it's clear that that's no longer going to be a thing. So I think he thought he was about to enter into a massive franchise, multiple, hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts, and it didn't happen. And so my guess is that he looked at that and said, well, you know what? That Fast and Furious money is still really, really good. Let me go back to that. Now, it'd be hilarious if that fell apart too. And it's like, oh, Rock, maybe it's you. Hardwick, James Gunn said the reason the special effects in Guardians 3 are so good is that he went in with a finished script and thus didn't overwork the effects team with a bunch of reshoots. Makes sense. Kimberly G, I'm going to rent Guardians 3. My boss hated it, which makes me want to wait. I'm not going to be good with animal. Yeah, so Kimberly G, I will say that's a good thing to mention. Yeah, if anyone does not like animal cruelty, if anyone gets bothered by those types of things, this is a dark movie. They give it that PG-13 rating because it might technically fit that criteria. But let me just put it this way. I think there are things in the film that are more disturbing than anything that was in Nefarious. And Nefarious was given a rated R rating. And again, that's just my own take, but Miss Minnesota fan, Dallas Stars kicked my Wild out of the playoffs. Oh, yeah. Dan Crane, the ring you're wearing, what is its significance? I don't know why I had to read it that way, but it just felt... So, obviously, this is the wedding ring, so need I say more? But no, this one was actually given by a subscriber on the channel. I believe it was Evan S? Evan S? Hasn't been around in a long time. Hasn't been around in the chat in a long time. But shout out to him because he sent this one to me, and it's a St. Benedict medal. So if you know anything about St. Benedict or the St. Benedict medal in general, it is a sacramental. So it's not, it's not magic or anything like that. But inscribed on the medal are the letters for a prayer in Latin, which is a prayer of exorcism. And so it's oftentimes a medal that has been used in exorcisms in the past. And so, yeah. I had always been wearing my high school ring for years, and he had seen it, and he had decided to, because we were both Catholic, and so he recognized that, and he's found this really cool ring, and I was like, okay, yeah. He was like, what's your ring? Of course, it's like that awkward conversation. What's your ring size? And I'm like, bro, okay, I'm already taken, all right? Calm down. But no, it was because he wanted to give me a new ring, and I was like, yeah, I like rings, so... Yeah, anyway. Saint Benedict ring. I like to say that I can punch a demon in the face with this thing. It's also been blessed. Let's see. Jenna Wingster. Odin is a fake Zelda fan. There it is. You got me. You got me. I didn't know the exact system. I love you. Miss Minosage. I want them to get kicked out talking about the Dallas Stars. Yeah, I get it. I understand. Yeah, we have a team. We have the Predators here in Tennessee. Steven, your thoughts that Vin Diesel stated he plans to do a trilogy for Fast 10? I think that's ridiculous. It's like the series has already gone on for way too long. Ryan Dole, Seattle Kraken is interesting. They made the playoffs in their second season. They were founded in 2021 with the 21-22 season being their debut. Yeah, again, and that's the reason why I was actually very excited for them, because I was like, yeah, this would be history, like in so many different ways. Like no team would have ever... And I think they may have even still made history with the fact that they made it into the postseason, but they would have been, I think, either the first or one of the few. I think it would have been the first, like, expansion teams, right? So a team in its infancy to be able to go as far as they were going. So, but I think you look at because I didn't know this out, I didn't find this out until just like a couple of days. The Las Vegas Knights are also a relatively young team. I think that they were founded in 2017. So, again, really not that long ago or so. So, the fact that they're also a very strong team is also pretty impressive. Remember, Sci-Fi, Fast and Furious has almost caught up to Final Fantasy, which comes out with 16 in June and has been around for less than half the amount of time. And I think that ultimately also helps to explain the issues with the Fast and Furious franchise. King and Rumsky, over on Rumble, if your food don't have any fat, oil, or butter in it, you ain't eating. Yes. I can dig that. I can dig that. Abomination. PG-13. Imagine if they had a close-up of a broken finger. Instant R rating. Am I right? I see what you did there. Yeah. Imagine if they would. It's just crazy how our rating system is. You know? It's like, oh yeah, you could say 2 F-bombs and you'll be totally fine. It's like, what? Steven, your thoughts on live-action Aladdin actor to leave Twitter due to Little Mermaid backlash? You think this will hurt the box office? No. That single tweet will not have any impact on the box office whatsoever. Because here is the fact. Most people do not live on Twitter. Most people in the world and going to see movies do not have any idea. If you were to go opening night to Little Mermaid, not that you should, but let's say you did, and you were to poll that theater and say, did you see what the actor from Aladdin said? No, like live action Aladdin, not the end. Did you see what he said? Most of them would say, what the heck are you talking about? And that's, I think, one of the problems that we sometimes fall into is that sometimes we can get so caught up in our own bubbles where we think everyone has to think the same way that we do. When the reality is that no, the vast majority of people don't. The vast majority of people are actually pretty ambivalent, right? It's not to say that the vast majority of people are on the opposite side of one's position, but rather that they're either oblivious or they just don't care. Most people like to live in a state of oblivion, right? But yeah, they would be very confused if you were to bring that up. That in and of itself is not going to have any impact on the box office. What's going to impact the box office of that movie is the fact that the trailer is trash. Because even if you are willing to grant, because there are certain positive things that we can say. One, the actress that they have playing Ariel can sing. She has a very nice voice. Like that's an objective thing that one could point out and say, hey, you know what? Her singing voice is actually pretty good. And based on what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing a lot of auto-tuning. I'm not really hearing a lot of post-processing. And again, but that's just on an initial listen. That all being said, the rest of it doesn't really look all that great. The CGI especially looks abysmal. The character design for the characters, like not only is the CGI bad, the actual designing of the CGI characters is abysmal, is terrible. That is what's going to hurt the box office for that movie. Add to that based on everything we've seen from their live action attempts, the story is probably just going to suck. Add all those factors together, that I think is what's going to make that box office continue. And again, if anything public, right? If anything political were to have any impact, it would still be the fact that Disney got involved in politics. I still go back and say, what is it that led to Lightyear and Strange World flopping at the box office? There's a lot of factors. It's not just one. There's a lot. But a big one, I would bet dollars to donuts. That's a fun expression, right? I would be willing to bet dollars to donuts, not pineapple on pizza, but dollars to donuts, that the primary or one of the main reasons is because Disney decided to get involved in the Florida laws. And it became a very public thing. Disney became known as being a company that's supposed to be geared towards kids, that was getting involved in politics to such a degree and supporting certain policies and certain pieces of legislation that would impact children directly, speaking kind of vague terms here, but that I think had the bigger impact. And I think it's continuing to have the big impact because they really haven't done much in that sphere of kids movies since. Look at their subscriber numbers. Look at their bottom line. They're still doing well in the theme parks, but the theme parks haven't changed all that much. Let's see. Forever Sci-Fi. I was too close to a tree. Who knew Zelda was so realistic? General Wingster. I'd recommend Wind Waker for newcomers. It's one of the easiest. Yeah, obviously any of the older titles for sure. Beta Cure. Got any tips for the exam tomorrow? It's not my exam because I don't have any exams tomorrow, but good luck. Master Gaming. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 actuals for its second weekend had better hold than estimated. Yeah. And I've been wanting to pull up those numbers. Let me see. I'm going to try this again. Bear with me as I try to boomer through this, okay? So I'm trying. Let me see. Maybe if I turn the studio mode off. All right, don't worry. I'm still here. El Guapo. You can see me in the bottom of the screen. Let's see. Let me change this. Oh, I know. I know what it is. I know what it is. I know what I did. There it is. Boom, there it is. And by the way, you just saw what I'm looking at, and you probably were like, oh my goodness, what is all of that? That's what I'm looking at. That's why I ask y'all to tag, because this is the chaos. If y'all want to see the chaos, this is what I look at. Look at all that stuff right there. That's why I need y'all tagging, because if you don't tag, oh my goodness, it's crazy. Anyway, I did it. Look at me. Look at me. All right. Let's go into the numbers. So yeah, as was being said, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, $62 million, a 48% hold. The original numbers projected were around 60 million, so it actually ended up doing better than what had been expected. But a 48% drop, keep in mind. Now, Deadline kept trying to run with this is the best hold for a movie post-pandemic. And I'm like, okay, Deadline. You're kind of burying the lead there. This is the best hold for any Guardians film in history. The previous Guardians films had 55% holds. But wait, Odin, those films had better openings. Well, let's go ahead and look at the numbers, all right? Right now, worldwide, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, $535 million worldwide numbers. Going into the summary here, a $250 million budget means right now it's at 2.1 times the budget. As you all know, my break-even is around 2.5 times the budget. So I think that film has a good chance of getting to its break-even either this weekend or next weekend at the very latest. Based on these numbers, though, we can start to make certain projections, right? We talked about this at the box office breakdown this past Sunday. But let's go ahead and pull up the charts, because we love to do charts here at OMB Reviews. And let's go ahead, of course, and have that adjust for inflation number on, because you know how much that is important to me. So, look at these three films. First off, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 opened $120.6 million when you adjust domestically. And Guardians 3 opened to $118 million. Okay. Guardians Volume 2 clearly the strongest at $170. And this makes a lot of sense because this film especially was really building off of the success of the first one. You go ahead and look at the total domestic. Both of the Guardians films previously were able to get to around $400 million. Well, okay, based on the fact that especially this movie was able to be pretty close to the first Guardians film when adjusted, and that it had a stronger drop, or rather a stronger hold than the previous films, tells me that, hey, there's still a chance for this film to actually do some pretty good numbers here domestically. Internationally, of course, though, is where a lot of these films tend to succeed to such a degree. And so, as you can see, the second film actually just barely breaks $1 billion when you adjust those numbers, and the first film is around 986. And so I still think that this movie, Guardians 3, is going to be the lowest grossing of the franchise. But as far as the individual film, as a part of this franchise, whereas you look at Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and you see a box office flop, you look at Thor 4 and see a massive disappointment, you go to a film like Doctor Strange, which to me, it's similar to a certain degree, right? Doctor Strange had a massive opening, right? It opened to $450 million worldwide. But the reason why that film, I think, is kind of a comparable one, is whereas that film had a massive upfront number, it then dropped 67% domestically. Talking here about Doctor Strange. And that $450 million, right, that should have been a guaranteed $1 billion film, right? That should have been well over $1 billion. With an opening like that, historically, $1 billion should have been a foregone conclusion. But it fell off the rails because the movie sucked. The word of mouth was not very good. Guardians 3, though, different. Not nearly as strong of an opening weekend as these other movies, but stronger than what had been projected. And what is that stronger than should have been projected? What does that tell us? That tells us the word of mouth on this film is actually really, really good. I don't need to bring up, the fake news. I'm going to refer to it as fake news until it's no longer a thing. CinemaScore. CinemaScore is garbage. They only ever release a grade. They don't give you any of the data. They don't tell you how many people they surveyed. They don't tell you where the people were surveyed, because all those things ultimately do matter. What's a better metric to me is that week 1 to week 2 drop. As you all know, I base all of my numbers, all of my projections on the week 2 numbers. And so that's why it drives me crazy when I hear people, especially people who are like just now, last year or two, jumping into talking about the box office, when they start talking about saying, yeah, but Fast 10 is coming up, right? Competition is coming up. These are all true things. This film had no competition at second weekend, but guess what? That's happened for a plethora of other movies. Super Mario Brothers, for instance, had no competition, not just for the first couple weeks, for almost an entire month it had no competition. And so we look to that movie, but is that film only successful? Did Mario make $1 billion only because, or primarily because, it had no competition? Or was it because people wanted to go see the movie and then wanted to go see the film more than once? I think most of us would say, oh no, even with competition, that film probably would have still made $1 billion, probably would have been pretty successful, right? So then I look at a film like Guardians and I think, okay, it's already made $500 million in the first 2 weeks. That means a best case scenario, and I don't think it's going to hit this, by the way, all right? A best case scenario would be $1 billion, right? A best case scenario would be doubling its first 2 weeks, and some films have done that. Some films can do that. I don't think that's going to happen here, for the record. But what do most films do, right? What do most films historically do compared to the first 2 weeks? Most films tend to make around 60% of their entire box office in their first 2 weeks. And if that holds, that means Guardians gets the $900 million. So even if you start to say, okay, well, I don't think it's necessarily going to get to that high. Okay, then what's going to be your endpoint? $850 million? In either of those cases, you're still talking about a film that is going to be the best performing film since Wakanda Forever. And the big difference is that Wakanda Forever had a much bigger marketing budget. At least that was what has been reported from Valiant Renegade. And again, shout out to him because they have inside sources. And so that's why I take it with a grain of salt. But they said that a lot of the money being spent on that movie, actually more money was spent on that movie than what had been indicated. However, with all that being said, the film is still looking pretty good. Looking at the daily numbers, as you can see, $219 million by its second Monday. It's still obviously trailing the second film, and it's not going to get to that second film's numbers. But 5 million, 5 million, 6 million on that second Monday. It's still playing, right? It actually did better on that Sunday On that second Sunday, 20 versus 16. 26 on the Saturday versus 21. So this film is starting to outpace the original movie. With competition, we'll have to wait and see, because competition is obviously going to drive those numbers down. But for this film to fall off a cliff after the numbers that we have been seeing, it would have to be a lot more than just competition that would bring this down. Competition alone is not going to do it, especially, again, I go back to the fact that even though I don't buy into what Box Office Pro is putting out about how they don't think Fast and Furious 10 is going to have a big opening or a big box office, I look to the franchise and say, I know it's going to play ball. All right, look at all these Fast and Furious films. These are all unadjusted numbers, right? The first film, 200 million. Second film, 236. Third film, I love it, but I know this film got panned because it is the most non-Fast and Furious film because the original characters are not in it, right? Except towards the very end. And there's a lot of special things that happen in this movie that make it one of my favorites. But then they followed up with Fast and Furious, and as you can see, returned to form, did better. And then this is when they start to go on a run. Fast 5 comes out, 629 million. Fast 6, 789 million. Fast 7, $1.5 billion. And again, all these films, these are the raw numbers. No adjustments. So we're talking about films that are a lot higher in this in the actual real numbers. The Fate of the Furious 8, $1.2 billion. And again, obviously, I think the quality started dropping off around Fast 7. I think Paul Walker's death had a pretty big factor in, Fast and Furious 7's success. But $1.2 billion, Fast 9, or rather Fast 8. Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw, the spin-off of this, $760. And then during the COVID era, still made $719 million. Now, even though I think, again, Fast 10 is going to perform better than what some people have been projecting, Box Office Pro looking at you, this number to me is interesting. And I'm obviously going to want to double check this coming weekend. But oh my goodness, $340 million budget. Are you kidding me? That is insane. That is insane if that number actually ends up holding true. If that number actually holds out. Because, again, some would argue my numbers are way, way, way too generous. But let's say, for the sake of argument, a generous estimate. If 2.5 times the budget is the break even, that means at $340 million, it would have to make $850 to break even. Some then, again, with different numbers, different metrics, would argue that the film needs to make close to $1 billion to break even. In either case, whether it be $850 or $1 billion, oh my goodness. So I looked at this, I looked at the marketing, and they've done a lot of marketing for this movie, and I can't see Fast 10 not doing incredibly well. I just don't see it. I think that the franchise has just a little bit too much strength. But this is obviously going to be the major test, right? Opening weekend is going to tell us quite a bit. It also will tell us, kind of going back to what we were saying before, it's going to tell us quite a bit also about Guardians. Do we see an overcorrection? Do we see Guardians have one of the worst week 3s in history? Personally, I don't think so. I showed you the numbers. It's tracking still very well compared to the other two Guardians movies. The first film especially was very, very well received. Had great word of mouth. This film also has very strong word of mouth. Even though this film has a lot of problems. Word of mouth on it still strong. The cute, fuzzy animals, even though they are featured in certain instances of having scenes of torture, is a very powerful thing, right? So I look to this, and I think to myself, okay, it's really hard for me to see how anyone can look at this number and not think this film is incredibly successful. It's doing incredibly well. Now, some might try to say, but Odin, where is all that foreign money coming from? Oh, wait, $60 million is coming from China. Okay. Well, just remember, $60 million from China isn't really all that much money. Think about some of the biggest releases that Marvel has had in China. $60 million ain't really nothing. But let's even take that into account. You're still talking about a film that would still be pretty close to $500 million, even without China, and still have very good positive word of mouth. And we know films without China can still do very well. So obviously we'll be following this movie. We'll be following its numbers. But based on what we're seeing, it wouldn't surprise me to see this film north of $650 million by the end of this coming weekend. Keep in mind, I thought this film was going to be lucky to get $500 million, and this made $535 million. So it's doing well. Some people might say differently, but hey, the numbers are what they are. The film is doing incredibly well. The film is going to be able to make its money back. The theaters would have to close down again. Another pandemic would have to come out of nowhere in order for this film to lose money at this point. And for this film to not be a success. Because its trajectory is already looking really, really good. All right? And as you can see, even the numbers own historic numbers for the domestic following. It's right within the range. It's right around where it should be. So I think ultimately that's going to be very well. And I did say I'd talk about Super Mario Brothers movie, $1.2 billion. What can I say? This film, again, still a giant hit success, but it's slowed down, right? I was saying how I thought, especially if it did have a strong showing in Japan and South Korea, 1.3 to 1.6 billion was a possibility. At this point, 1.6 does not have a chance. This film's looking probably to end around $1.3 billion. In that range of around 1.3 billion. Still very good. All right, again, $100 million budget, 1.3 billion. That is, again, $700 million of profit. That can fund the next 6 movies or so of this franchise. Massive hit, massive success. But it could have been bigger. And I think Universal shot themselves in the foot by delaying its release in places like South Korea, in places like Japan. Because, again, what had everyone been saying now for weeks? Just wait. This is all without Japan, guys. Just wait until Japan comes out running. It's going to just wait. Oh, 59.5 million. Again, that's very, very good. That's not earth-shattering. I was told that Mario was like the biggest thing ever in Japan. And that very well is probably true. But as I've been saying, that does not always equate a 1-to-1 ratio to box office dollars. And as you can see, $59.5 million. Looking to get around $100 million by the end of its run. And that's still very good. But that ain't earth-shattering. That ain't Elvis numbers. The Elvis of Japan, some could say. Not at the box office, at the very least. And then South Korea, people were bringing that up. Well, here are those numbers, 15.2 million. And again, it's not terrible, but it's also not the numbers that people were saying, just you wait, just you wait. Well, I waited, and it just didn't come to fruition. So those are the numbers that they stand. I want to get to the chat, though, because there have been a lot of comments, and we're getting close to the end. But let's see. King and Rumsky says, just my opinion, but I think the reason Geeks and Gamers wanted you to eat more pizza is because they didn't see you suffer long enough. They wanted you to stretch it out. But just think about that concept for a moment. We want you to suffer more. It's like, wait, no. You want me to throw up. It's basically what it is. It's like, I'm sorry. Maybe, and you can argue, you take yourself too seriously. That might be actually be the case. But also remember, I do have a full-time job. I do this because it's fun. And shoving down 4 pieces of pineapple pizza, which I never agreed to, that ain't fun. Especially when I know there's a high chance that after just the second piece, starting the second piece, I have a good chance of throwing up. No, thank you. And if that hurts your feelings, sorry, not sorry. Let's see. King and Runsky. Let's see. Now you got it, says King and Rumsky. Gotcha. Abomination over on Aussie. I'd be interested to see how Guardians 3 compares to Black Panther 2. Racist stereotypes, exploitation of the actor's death, girl bosses, all versus cute animal characters and the villain who harms them. Ooh. Yeah, I definitely have to put those things. I definitely have to put those comparisons together. Abomination, are you a Time Lord? I never heard of the term Daleks to donuts. Maybe. I might. I can neither confirm nor deny. Let's see. Laura says, I bet the Krakens have some really cool merch. Their stadium or their arena is called The Deep. That's awesome. Like, again, think about how cool that is. Tonight, we're live from the deep. I love that. OMB Reviews. Okay, I am back. Had to step away to fix the roof of the wood shed. Wind blew a piece of the roof right off. Oh, dang. I hope you're fine. Hope you're okay. Snow Golem 13. That was a healthy piece of pizza. I remember the original bet. Yeah. I even ordered it with extra pineapple. Because I was like, oh, people might not like that it's one slice, but I'll put extra pineapple on it, try to make it. Is what it is at this point. For my final week, my final is a week from Thursday. Yeah, mine starts on Thursday. Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington, drop by before bed, drop a like to my favorite tuber. Thank you very much, Gary Banjo Sandwich. Appreciate that. Forever Sci-Fi, probably a few snow days to account for in Minnesota. Physics Channel Kenny Lee, what's going on? Welcome back. Hardwick. One of Lure's projects is a documentary about Gothics. Ooh, interesting. Tacos. Yeah, we had Taco Tuesday. It was Taco Tuesday here. Baby Thor knows the phrase Taco Tuesday. It's pretty great. Yes, I indeed was boomering it. You are correct. That small tuna. Is that a sword in the corner? It looks pretty cool. Yeah, it's a wooden katana. Soul Assassin. The Valks would be proud that your numbers ain't working today. Oh, yes. Stephanie especially. Titan, what's going on? Cthulhu, sorry about the technical difficulties. Maybe point the camera at the screen. Oh, man. Let's see. Hardwick. I agree with Chris Gore that Palm Clementef as Mantis was a major standout. It makes me look even more forward to seeing her and Haley Atwell's new characters in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. I wasn't really that impressed by her. She wasn't bad, but I don't know. Mantis doesn't really interest me. Matt R., what's going on? Hail to you. Candy T, I love this Guardians of the Galaxy, but it broke my heart so much the first time that I don't think I could watch it again. Exactly. You know, again, I think there's some really good things, but ultimately, yeah. Rob D, I noticed in my subscriptions, Drunk 3PO posted that apparently John Schilcampio called out Ryan RK Outpost. Oh, maybe he did. I heard, didn't someone say the other day that Campia was like quitting YouTube or something? But also to be called out by Campia as shill extraordinaire, I mean, that's not saying much. Great Wuda. Maybe if that AMC got more money from tickets, they would have replaced the bulb. They're already getting all the money from popcorn and from drink sales. Giant X Killer, thanks for becoming a member at the Citizen of Asgardian level. Typo that's been in for years, and I'm keeping it in there. Not changing it. Hardwick, what do you think of the decision to have Star-Lord drop an F-bomb? To me, it didn't make much sense. Yeah, some people said that, like, oh, it was at the perfect moment, and I was like, it was not at the perfect moment. It made no sense. It was such a throwaway line where you're like, wait, that's the one that you decide to add in? Your first F-bomb in the MCU? And it's a, get in the car. Again, I'm someone where I'm not really impressed when you're like, oh, we're going to put in a joke. And you know what the joke is? He says the F word. Foul language is not good writing. It's not clever writing. And it's not in and of itself funny. Fitzgerald Lee. The Predators are fun to watch. I usually catch a couple games a year. Yeah, that's definitely something that Lady Freya and I have talked about trying to go to a couple of those games. Miss Minnesota fan says Las Vegas made it into the playoffs their first season. Is that what you meant to say? Laura says the Minneapolis Lakers moved to Los Angeles where there are no lakes. The Oilers moved to Tennessee where there is no oil. The Jazz moved to Salt Lake City where they don't allow dancing. I love that. Oh man. Is that from Wikipedia? Is that from That's great. Rob D. MCU needs to go out with a bang and release an NC-17 Avengers 5, even though most theaters would ban it and thus it wouldn't be a bang at the box office. Miss Minnesota. They changed the lyrics of the song. Oh, they kept the same songs? That's silly. Hardwick. When you think about it, Guardians 3 is a Vin Diesel movie about family. It is. It really is. Especially the We Are Groot. I love you guys. Carl, I never saw the live action Aladdin because I still see Robin Williams as a genie, not Will Smith. Yes, one of the many reasons, and there's a lot of them, that movie's terrible. Father Miller, the cities grow, the rivers flow where you are. I never know, but I'm still here. but I'm still here. Short. You can do it. I did it. Cities grow. Oh, a repeat there. Hardwick. On a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised will you be if Indiana 5 winds up being better than Temple of Doom? Here's something that I can say unequivocally. It's not. I won't be surprised because I know exactly what we're getting. The second trailer that actually features Phoebe Waller-Bridge way too much tells me everything that I need to know about it. Especially her fun little line about, that's capitalism. Hardwick. Why do you think it is that Marvel gave James Gunn more creative control than the other Phase 4-5 directors? I wish they had done same for Sam Raimi. It could be contracts. It could be powered influence. There's a lot of different reasons. But they didn't. And those films were just not good. And I don't think the film, as I said, I think you might give way too much credit to Guardians 3. Don't get me wrong. It is the best film of the MCU to come out since Infinity War. That is not saying a lot. The film still has a plethora of issues. The length of the film, again, that ultimately comes into the pacing of the movie. As I said, the CGI of a lot of the characters is really good, but there's also a lot of really bad CGI. Oh, the scene of them in all the different colored suits. There's a lot of contrivances, a lot of plot contrivances, plot conveniences, etc. Writing issues. A waste of actors, too. Like, some of the most random, it's like, oh, we're going to have this, Nathan Fillion's going to show up randomly. It's like, come on. But it's, again, there's good things in there, but it's far from a great film. Desert Fox, it depends on what the bugs are. And yes, I mean that seriously. Yeah, Campia went behind a paywall. Oh, okay. He made it so that only paying members can see his daily live streams on YouTube. Oh, okay. So he's not going anywhere, really. Oh. Here's the thing. I feel bad for anyone that actually wants to pay for his daily streams. I just don't get that. I don't understand that. I really don't. That does not make any sense to me. Hardwick says, your arm wrestling challenge terms are unwise. By allowing Gary to put anything he wants on the pizza, you could wind up with double pineapple, a half-inch Vegemite, and a whole can of anchovies. Yes, this is very true. However, the last I remember, that thing has still not been fully accepted. Because every time I kept asking, I kept getting, yes, but. And it's like, no. It's either we're doing it or we're not. And also, the same thing that happened the last time is happening again. Where it's like, hey, here's what the challenge is. Oh, no, that's not good enough. So we're going to do this. It's like, no, whoa, okay. One slice. I'll let you do a lot more with this slice because let's try to have this at a meetup that's not on a Friday because then you can add in certain, meat elements on there too. But yeah. So we'll see if it actually ends up happening. I thought it was a fun idea, but instead it turned into a public scolding. And I was like, okay, this is where we're going with it. Interesting. Kimberly G, gotta go. Good night. Yeah, we're about to end things here. Victor Fontaine, and his first stream behind that paywall with just his subscribing members watching, he went after Ryan. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Forever Sci-Fi, how can there be an Indy 5 when there was never an Indy 4? Hey, it's a fair assessment. Forever Sci-Fi. Let's see. Abomination. Speaking of bad writers, swearing for the sake of swearing. Did you see Miller Lite's new ad? I did not. Snow Golem. Let's see. No, I got that one already. Abomination. To be frank, bleeping the swearing is slightly better than those old commercials that would quickly say a few words together to sound like swearing, like I just shipped my pants, which makes no sense when you think about it. That's a fair assessment. Absolutely. All right, so that is going to do it for this evening. It's 8:34, so able to end right on time. So thank you all for those that are still here watching. I appreciate y'all's love and appreciate y'all's support. I'm going to go see if I can grab myself a little bit of ice cream and then play a little bit more of Tears of the Kingdom. But main takeaways from the show, Tears of the Kingdom, great game, a lot of fun. I'm not a big fan of puzzles, but hey, there's a lot of other things in here that I do really like a lot. If you did ever play and like Breath of the Wild, I think you're going to like this one too. Also, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, it's doing well box office wise. Simple as that. It's made over $500 million at this point. It is well on its way to making a decent amount of money, as I mentioned in the box office breakdown. We're looking at somewhere in the $800 to $900 million range by the end of its run. Again, the only way that doesn't happen is if the wheels completely fall off, which, based on the numbers that we're seeing, this does not seem to be the case. And Super Mario Brothers movie, $1.2 billion. It's looking like it's going to end around $1.3 billion, which is really, really good. However, the superstar numbers that were being talked about for months from Japan and South Korea have not actually come to fruition. So, again, take those things for what you will. And I think that one easy way to fix that, because I really do honestly think a lot of why Japan did not show up to it, it is still a Western film, and I think that this also helps to confirm that original analysis that I gave on this. But I think the bigger thing to me is they have to, next time, for whatever the next Nintendo movie is, they have to release it at the same time in as many places as possible. Because that does have, we know this, when there are big films that get delayed by a month or more, a lot of the time, maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time, it does dive into those numbers because that momentum gets lost. Piracy goes up. There's a ton of things. But anyway, Snow Golem, good night to you as well. Abomination, good night to you. King Kane Rumsky, good night to you on Rumble. Thanks again for being here. General Wingster, ice cream for me. Absolutely. For me! Use Google for the puzzles. Oh, Soul Assassin, believe me, I have been using YouTube/Google for some of those puzzles because I'm like, I have no concept of how this... There was one where I was looking at it and the top comment was, how did they possibly think that normal people would be able to figure that out? Like, what world did they think? Like, the mind that you would need for some of those puzzles just seems pretty crazy. Victor Fonte, thanks for being here. Candy T, Tina Guzman, Carl, Icthulu, the Ginger Ninja, thank you again. You guys are all awesome, amazing, and beautiful people. Just a reminder, I will not be on FNT this Friday. I'm be traveling to a little bit outside the Atlanta area, spending some time with family this weekend, little family vacation with the wife's family. So out Friday, and that means I'll also be out Saturday, so no Saturday stream this weekend. I will not be on Friday Night Tights, and I'm trying to think past that. Still need to reach out to my Chosen to figure out a Chosen stream because this May is insane. It's the end of the school year. We have exams this week, and there's just so many things going on. So I'm going to try to figure out what the best weekend is for the most amount of people. And thank y'all for your patience with that. And for those who have won giveaways, I'm still waiting on a box for the John Wick trilogy giveaway. But I have it literally ready to go. I just need to get a box for it. I'm just waiting for a box to come in that's the perfect size. And then if you recently won a film in the giveaway on the giveaways channel, I'm going to try to get those out this week. Probably won't be until Thursday, Friday, since those are going to be half days with my exams. So anyway, you guys are all amazing. Have a wonderful rest of your eating, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my patrons at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off with my patrons over on Patreon, Father Luca Illick, Hymir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, who you can check out over at his YouTube channel, Orange Chat Reviews, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel of Eagle Rider, and Miss Modern Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel by the same name as well. Also to my Subscribestar peeps, Matt317, check him out over on Twitch, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my local supporters, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. Thank you all very much for supporting me at that Keep It the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shout out at the end of every video and live stream, make sure to check out the top link in the video description in order to get access to that. Also, there's a level where you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with my friend John the Flip Flickinger, and also to a giveaways channel on my Discord where you get access to the giveaways of various 4K titles, including right now I've got a 4K Steelbook for Training Day. I got the 7th Seal from Criterion, Plane Trains Automobiles, Kubo and the Two Strings, They Live, Train to Busan, tons of others every single week, every single month, rather every single week. I'm going to stick by that. We're doing this live. I just recently gave away the 3 Steelbook collection for John Wick franchise, the amazing Stash Book Collection version. So if you want to have access to various things like that, hey, check out that top link in the video description below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.